ActionSA leader Herman Mashaba has slammed the City of Johannesburg's strategy for hijacked buildings. Mashaba says the city's plan to negotiate with tenants of the hijacked buildings could put the very residents who some live with children in danger. The city has reportedly resorted to engaging residents on whether they can afford to pay rent before evicting them. The issue of hijacked buildings in the city centre is back in focus following the brutal murder of media personality DJ Warras, allegedly over a hijacked building. Mashaba joins me now live for more on the plan in order to address this crisis. And Dr. Mashaba, Merry Christmas to you, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. Why does ActionSA believe that negotiating with occupants of hijacked buildings is dangerous or ineffective?
Firstly, good afternoon and Merry Christmas to you, your family, Newzroom Afrika listeners and viewers. I think as a country, we've got to really be very careful. Our country today is today regarded as one of the most violent nations on earth. And it is unfortunate that we can have a political leader who wants to negotiate with criminals. I'm sure in history, any country that is involved with criminal underworld, unfortunately, that country is doomed to fail. We've just been exposed by Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi about the South African politicians being involved in the criminal underworld. This is a very dangerous situation. People who have hijacked those buildings are criminals, and I think we've got to call them as such. People who live in these buildings, majority of them are undocumented foreign nationals. It's an issue that are raised vociferously during my term as a mayor of the City of Johannesburg. But the plan was that, which is today an official policy of the City of Johannesburg. In 2017, through council, I passed what is called the Inner City Rejuvenation Plan. The entire media and people of Johannesburg, if not the whole of South Africa, knows about this plan. In the 3 years as a mayor, managed to identify over 600 properties and buildings which are hijacked or abandoned. And by the time I left, already 154 of them were already awarded to the private sector to build affordable accommodation to our people and our students. And we made it clear, unapologetically to the private sector, that 30% of the units being built must go to low-income earners and students. And as you are aware, we were oversold on these properties, and I had committed to give away 100 buildings per year during my tenure as a mayor. Unfortunately, I could only serve for 3 years because dark forces planned my exit. But the policies there, the MMC is very much aware about this. When ActionSA came into government in 2021, we came out with a motion to the executive mayor to bring back that report, because it was already passed by the council. 154 buildings were already awarded to the private sector. But my last council meeting I attended, 37 factories around Alexander Weinberg were already approved by council to be put on tender for the private sector. So I don't understand why the MMC wants to start all over again and is starting on a wrong footing, ignored the issue for 4 years, now just comes out with a new issue and wants to negotiate with criminal elements. And as we said, no, this is totally unacceptable. Let him approach the executive mayor to get those reports from JPC, because after my removal, the mayor, Jeff Makhubu, at the time, requested or demanded JPC to put those reports aside, which is actually illegal because those reports were passed by council.
I mean, and the ActionSA is talking about taking a hard and uncompromising approach in dealing with these hijacked buildings. What would that approach be?
Well, it would really be that we don't negotiate with criminals. We identify property hijacked. We look out for those people, and in the event we can't find the owner of the property, we then use the current constitution in terms of expropriation without compensation. We then expropriate this particular building, then it belongs to the city, because you find if all of them, all these high-tech buildings, they're connecting to our city's infrastructure like water, electricity, and not really pay the city. So we have the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa allows a government to expropriate any land or property as long as it's for public good. It is for that reason I succeeded in expropriating these properties. And I think during my term as a mayor, because unfortunately some of the owners were made to flee by criminal elements, during the time as a mayor, we gave back 44 buildings where we found the owners. But where we don't find the owners, when we expropriate them, these properties then belong to the city. Once they belong to the city, because the city does not have the money to rejuvenate them, then we give them to the private sector with conditions on a long lease basis.
And is it important to distinguish between those that hijack the buildings, that being the syndicates, and those that occupy the buildings? And I mean, in this instance, you mentioned that many of them are undocumented foreign nationals. How does ActionSA then respond to the argument that maybe negotiating might lead to more humane treatment of some of these vulnerable residents?
There's no humane treatment of negotiating with criminal activity. If a property is hijacked and as a country we bring in humane, what we call humane treatment. Humane treatment is Katlego, go into those buildings, go and see how our people live. With stench that to really actually go into this building, you will need a mask. And the young children are brought up in this environment. These so-called human rights lawyers and NGOs who are fighting on behalf of criminal elements, we should not really entertain this. That's why we need to redevelop these properties, to build proper infrastructure so that our people can rent properly, or if they want to purchase, they can purchase. But we cannot even entertain the talking to criminal elements. Criminals belong to prison. They don't really belong to sitting around the table to talk to.
What's your take on the role of the Prevention of Illegal Eviction Act, especially in the city's approach when it comes to hijacked buildings? I mean, now with this thrust back into the spotlight, there are many conversations with regards to how we can go about this, and some are even proposing that landlords can then get some of those non-paying tenants of theirs to rather be charged with trespassing, so that they are then removed, as opposed to then the landlord having to find alternative accommodation for them. Or do you think there needs to be changes, especially when it comes to our law, particularly when it comes to the Prevention of Illegal Eviction Act?
I'm happy to give free advice and patriotic advice to the MC and the executive of the City of Johannesburg. Let them just revisit those inner city rejuvenation plans to see how we're going to tackle this particular matter. I'm on record because I used to every quarter have a meeting with the private sector, to have press conference to let South Africans know how the process is going to unfold. Because we have identified the plus minus 600 properties, and we started at the time of our left with 154. What we said we will do, as soon as the private sector wins a tender on a long lease basis, and what we said to them, 3 months before you start the building, let us know that you are ready. Then us as a city takes the responsibility to move those people to another hijacked building, and then we then coordinate off so that you start building, you start your development. And what we said, give preference in employment opportunities to South Africans to work in that. So the plan is there, it's in black and white, passed by council. Why they want to start all over again, wanting to negotiate with the criminal elements and syndicates, it's bizarre for me. It's just really political theater than actually finding a solution. The solution is there, already passed by the municipality of the City of Johannesburg. EFF supported this particular inner city rejuvenation plan. The plans are there, the official documents.
You mentioned the role that civil society plays in this entire picture. Just maybe paint for us in terms of your concerns with regards to civil society organizations, especially when it comes to the protection of those that are occupying some of these buildings.
Look, we must not really be fooled by some of these NGOs and lawyers for so-called lawyers for human rights that they care about human rights. They don't care a damn about human rights because honestly and truly, just go into those buildings and you're going to show me human rights where you let people live worse than pigs. I was I was born and brought up in a village where some of the community members used to breed pigs and so forth. And I look at the state of the pigs and cattle and look at the living conditions of our people in the inner city, in a city where at the time we had over 300,000 housing backlog, and majority of these people living in squalor, not only in these hijacked buildings, in informal settlements, squatter camps called informal settlements. You look at a place like Soweto, where today you have some of the houses up to three generations of people living in these properties, because our government in 1994 developed this failed RDP policy consideration, and they can see it's not working. And they've taken the right of the cities to be responsible for housing. But one thing for sure, in the City of Johannesburg, as a mayor, I came out with something revolutionary, historic, because there's 154 buildings. We're going to bring in 32 billion rands of investment during the construction phase. This project was going to create 22,000 jobs during the construction phase.
Right.
This plan was going to create 14,000 housing opportunities. So you can imagine if dark forces didn't plan my exit, the City of Johannesburg today would really be a completely new, well-developed city with our people living in dignity, with no single undocumented foreigner in our city, because it was one issue that no one must ever ask me to entertain, keeping one undocumented foreign national in the city I govern. So that's a position of ActionSA. I used to have arguments or debates with some of these human rights lawyers, arguing when I said to them, when we rate these properties, we'll find up to 80% of the people in there being 80%. And they'll argue to that, according to their own findings, is 26%. That's a 26%, such a high number.
Right.
I don't want to argue around 80% and 26%. Let me tell you something. I don't want to live in a country where there's one undocumented foreign national.
All right. Herman Mashaba, thank you so much for your time and joining us this evening. That's the ActionSA leader criticizing the MMC for public safety in the city of Johannesburg with regards to that approach of negotiating with tenants in hijacked buildings.